Hello students, today we will discuss the external feature of cerebral hemisphere. So this cerebral hemisphere, they are connected with each other through the corpus callosum and they are separated with each other through the longitudinal fissure. So each cerebral hemisphere is having three surfaces. One is superolateral surface, another one is the medial surface, this one is the medial surface, and third one is the inferior surface. This inferior surface, it is further divided by the lateral sulcus into anterior orbital surface and posterior, this one is the tentorial surface. It's having the four border. Each cerebral hemisphere is having four border. One is superomedial border. This superomedial border, it separates the superolateral surface with medial surface. Another border is inferolateral border. This inferolateral border, it separates the superolateral surface with inferior surface. Another border is medial orbital border. This is the medial orbital border. It separates the orbital surface with medial surface. And the fourth one is the medial occipital border. This is medial occipital border. It separates the tentorial surface with medial surface. Then each cerebral hemisphere, it's having three pole. One is frontal pole, it lies anteriorly. Another one is the occipital pole, it lies posteriorly. And the third one is the temporal pole, which lies laterally, or anterior end of the temporal pole, it lies laterally. Then each cerebral hemisphere, it's having the thin layer of grey matter which covers, and this thin layer of the grey matter is known as the cerebral cortex. So this cerebral cortex, it folded itself and give rise to the number of raised area. These raised area is known as the gyrus, and these gyrus or gyri that separates with each other through the depressions. This depression, it separates the gyri, and this depression is known as sulci. So sulci and the gyri are present in the surfaces. If we make a center point in between the frontal and the occipital pole, then this one is the central part, then this sulcus is known as the central sulcus. This central sulcus, it anterior to it, this is the precentral gyrus and the precentral sulcus, and posterior to the central sulcus, this is the postcentral gyrus and the postcentral sulcus. Moving to the posterior end, this is the occipital pole. In front of the occipital pole, if we make a 5 cm towards the superomedial border, then this point is known as the parieto-occipital sulcus. This is parieto-occipital sulcus. This sulcus, it comes from medially. This is the medial surface, medially parieto-occipital sulcus. Another 5 cm point from the inferolateral border. So this from the occipital pole, this one is the 5 cm towards the anteriorly. This one is known as pre-occipital notch. This is pre-occipital notch. So if we draw a line, imaginary line from the pre-occipital notch to the parieto-occipital sulcus, this one is the imaginary line. Now each cerebral hemisphere, it is divided into the four lobes. In front of the central sulcus, this is known as the frontal lobe. Posterior to the central sulcus up to this imaginary line, this is the parietal lobe. Posterior to this imaginary line, this is the occipital lobe. And then this lateral sulcus, it separates and gives rise to the temporal lobe. So each cerebral hemisphere, it's having three surfaces: superolateral, medial and the inferior, four borders: superomedial, inferolateral, and medial orbital and the medial occipital, having three pole: frontal, occipital, temporal, and the four lobe: frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. So these are the external feature of cerebral hemisphere. Thank you.